Oh, when you're ready. Right, folks, good evening. Welcome to the Operational Board in 2 locations and several more, online and live. First thing we'll do is introductions. If you could all, we'll start with the online guys. If you could introduce yourselves and your roles with how you play it. Thank you. Start on the top left, Jan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Shepherd. I'm an independent board member on the main board. Yeah, so that's me.
Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Johnson, Customer Engagement and Community Development Manager at Derby Homes.
Lucy, welcome.
Hi, I'm one of the councillors on the main board.
Michael.
Good evening, I'm Michael Kirk, I'm the Finance Director and Company Secretary.
You. Tony.
Hi there, I'm Tony Home. I'm the leaseholder representative on the Operationals Board, and I'm also on the Audit Committee.
Thank you. Kaz.
Hi, I'm Kaz Sahota from Strategy and Performance, Derby City Council, supporting obviously performance and the delivery plan.
Thank you, Kaz. Claire.
Good evening, everyone. Claire Marabani, I'm Director of Housing Services. I'm standing in for Lorraine Testro today.
Thank you. Bobby.
Good evening, everyone. It's Bobby Howe, Safeguarding Compliance Manager and Complex Needs Manager for Derby Homes.
Thank you. Dennis.
Yeah, my name's Dennis Rees. I'm a tenant board member.
Thank you, Dennis. Chloe.
Hi, I'm an Improvement Support Officer in the Strategy and Performance team at Derby City Council.
Thank you very much. Jan, we've had you. Paul, just you're in the background, aren't you? Okay, we'll now move into the live element of it. Start with Mr. Bayliss.
Hi everyone, my name's Steve Bayliss. I'm Head of Repairs.
My name's Kevin Alloway, Derby Homes tenant.
Hello, I'm Jim Joyce. I'm Head of Housing Options and Homelessness for Derby Homes.
Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise Paget and I'm the Governance Officer for Derby Homes.
And that just leaves me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bob McDonald. I'm Chair of the Operational Board and Vice Chair of the Main Board, amongst other things. Thank you. We can move down the list for apologies. I only know of one apology. Have you got any more, Louise? Just the one?
Yeah.
Mike Ainsley sent his apology, and that's the only one I've got.
And Lorraine Test.
Oh, Lorraine. Yeah, I forgot about that.
As well, Bob sends her apologies.
And I'm not aware of any late items. Louise, have you got any late items? No. Declarations of interest. I've got the usual. Anybody got anything different?
May I just add that I've mentioned that I need to update my declarations of interest because I'm coming off Derby Homes Board, but I'm going on to the Derbyshire Environmental Trust as a board member, and I'm also will be a board member of the Derby and Burton Hospital University Hospitals Trust. But that hasn't actually formally gone through, but I'm expecting it to go through this week.
Did I just hear that right, Lucy? You're leaving the Derby Homes Board?
No, I'm still on Derby Homes Board, but I'm doing these other boards, and I need to update my declarations, which hasn't yet been formally done.
I misheard you there, Lucy. Oh, that's good.
No, I'm still here. Don't worry.
And that's it for the chair's announcements. I've only got a couple to make tonight. Could I just ask all those who are invited to attend operational board, not main board meetings as well, if you could just have the courtesy, please, to reply and say if you're coming or not. You know, it just helps with the catering and the planning. That's just a small thing, but it's just something I feel strongly about. You know, if you just let Louise know if you're attending or not. We're all on board with that then? Thank you. And the other thing is, it's well known that the operational board sometimes runs over. So in an attempt to try and be responsible, I think I'm going to speak to Lorraine to see if we could devise a system of time slots. I was at a meeting on Monday where this was in place and it worked really well because those meetings I was at normally run over, but this one didn't this time because it was allocated time slots. And I know it's difficult, but I think some of you may have been given reports towards the end of the session and felt you've got to rush it through and miss things, and that's not fair. All reports are important. So I'll take any thoughts on that from anyone who wants to put an input at this point, and I'll speak to Lorraine on her return and see what she thinks. Any comments?
I support the idea, Chair. I think it will be a good idea.
Thank you, Holly. Right, look at the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March then, please, if we can. First of all, for accuracy, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, nobody, page 7, page 8, and page 9. And I think it's fair to point out as well that if I miss your hand out, do shout out, won't you? If you put your hand up and I miss you, please shout out.
Yeah, page 9, Bob.
Yeah.
I mentioned nationwide windows, but I can't see any mention of it.
Well, remember that, Dennis, yeah.
I mean, Ian gave a good reply, and it was good. But I want to say that nationwide windows, the communication was crap, but the actual work was really excellent.
So
The 2 blokes that came were really, really good, nice, pleasant, clean, did everything right.
Thank you for that.
Thanks,
we'll
Dennis.
try and work to improve that, Chair. We'll do some work on that.
Thanks, Dennis. Any other matters arising? No, take that as a true and accurate record of the meeting.
Sorry, Bob, are you asking for matters arising or just for accuracy?
No, it's matters arising, Tony. No.
Well, there's several bits where we were expecting reports back to the operations board. Page 3, for example, the operational board requested Derby Homes to follow this up. That was to do with new builds.
Oh, yes.
A bit further down, we requested some feedback. So can the appropriate officer just comment if anything's happened?
Anybody comment on it?
Which bullet point are you on, Chair?
Are you on?
Sorry, it's 2889 on page 3 at the end. It's confirmed that the meeting has been held with the council regarding car sharing facilities and the use of communal charging points at community rooms. However, Derby Homes have not received any further feedback on this. Operational board requested for Derby Homes to follow this up. Has that been done?
I know Lorraine Test been in communication around the car sharing. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. We are working with the council on a wider initiative around possible sites for communal electric car charging. It's not going to be something that's going to be done overnight. It is going to be a long-term project. So I think what we should do is perhaps bring something back to the board once the plans are in a bit more detail and the timescales are a bit more firmed up.
That sounds sensible. I wasn't expecting you to have an answer today. Just have you started the ball rolling?
Well, we've continued to keep the ball rolling. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put my hand up.
Sorry, no.
Now, can I also add on our new build developments, certainly the ones with communal parking areas, we're working on trying to provide some sort of communal charging on those. So these are the schemes that will be starting this year. Not on the ones where people have individual parking arrangements, ones where there are communal parking. Not only we're going to provide perhaps charging to the scheme, but also try and work some communal charging facility into that. But we are at the same time going to have to look at the capacity of the grid in some areas. I know we've been installing solar panels in Chaddesden lately. We've had issues with the size of the capacity of the grid to cope with the increased inputs into the grid. So it's not straightforward. So
one of the issues, what we've already got to take into account on communal charging is if we make it exclusive to the residents, it's simply not going to be viable. We need to make the charging points available more widely to justify the capital expenditure, and there's the element of the recharging the cost for when they use that. We haven't really got a solution for at the minute.
Lucy, you're on mute, Lucy.
My apologies. I'm really pleased these conversations are going on because it is a new area, and the issues that Ian and Michael have raised are ones that lots of people are grappling with. The council has some money for supporting putting in more public electric charge points. I think it's originally from the government, and I feel that there should be some way, if everyone explores it in the right direction, there will be a way forward. And the other thing for the grid that may be a way forward is to look at putting in significant battery storage into an area, which would both enable to be able to trickle feed into the grid if we need to, when the sun goes behind a cloud, but also it would give a big boost so that people could do faster battery charging, because that wouldn't drain down the grid, but you'd be able to drain out of the battery faster. So there are things like that we need to be looking at holistically alongside the council and Western Power. So, all power to your elbow. Let's find something that works, and we can be a demonstration project.
Thanks, Lucy. Anybody else on that point? No. Tony, you had some more, I believe.
Yeah, 2211 on page 6. Asking that confirmation that when sprinkler systems are checked when the voids occur, assume you've had any voids with a sprinkler system in.
I must admit, I'm going to need to come back on that, Tony. We did talk to the team about it, and they were looking into it. If there's a legal requirement to do it like there is with gas and electric, it'll be done on the void. If it's just important that we do it once a year, and we don't need a new, we will do it that way. But let me come back to you, and I'll give an answer to.
Yeah, I know you've only put them in on sort of new builds, so I don't know whether any have come up on older properties.
It's unlikely, to be honest. It's unlikely. But what will have happened is it'll either be that Chris Clark, who looks after this, we're doing it on the void, or if it's just one of those things that we do this property in February of each year, and it's not a requirement to do it every time the tenancy changes, it would stay on that. I just need to clarify which one of that is actually happening. But those services are done, but you just obviously want clarification from the perspective of when it becomes a void, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just to make sure it's working for new tenants.
So we'll carry that forward to the next meeting if you're happy with that.
Yep.
Thank you, Tony. Any others?
A few more. I'll only go through what's in the minutes. So 2212, operational board queried if the PET policy also applied to leaseholders. Derby Homes will seek clarification and report back to the board.
I think that was me when I was here last time. Apologies. Can we carry that one forward? I haven't been able to clarify that as yet.
Okay.
So I'll bring an answer for next time.
Okay.
And there were a couple more on 2214 under PET's policy, but I think that's Derby Homes agreed to conclude the appeals process and report back to the operational board.
Tony, if I could, sorry to interject, if I could just update, because we did discuss the PETs policy at the last leaseholder forum.
We did.
So just to, and perhaps I should have updated Jenny. And I think what we said was we would look to apply the PETs policy, the new PETs policy, to new leaseholders, but we wouldn't be able to enforce it to existing leaseholders because it wasn't, or the previous PET policy wasn't incorporated into the lease agreement at that stage. So it's something that we will be looking to incorporate going forward for new leaseholders.
Yeah, and that to some extent covers the issues in 2214 against the PETs policy.
Yeah.
And that was me on the minutes.
Thanks, Tony, and I appreciate your input. Are we all happy with those minutes now then? And you're going to get back to Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
All done then. Thank you. Let's move on then to the next item. And I think that's you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, if you just bear with me.
I'll share the screen, Kaz, for the slides. Just 1 minute while I share it. Hopefully it'll come up. Okay, can everybody see the first slide?
Yeah.
Excellent.
We're on slide 2 on mine.
Yeah, so sorry, I've just gone straight to it because the first one is literally just
Okay, that's
like
fine.
the over report. I've just gone. We're just planning to go through a couple of slides where the main highlights ones, and apologies to main board members, they'll have seen this one already.
Fantastic.
Okay, so the Q4 highlights of the measures that are either green or blue. As you can see there, the standout is our sort of continuing good performance on satisfaction measures. At the end of the year, Q4, we've got all 8 that are on green, so they've met their targets. So satisfaction measures have met their target. Complaints resolved at stage 2 and meeting timescales, those are green as well, so as above, meeting targets. And property compliance, the maintenance measures, also meeting target. There are some that are blue, so those are ones that have exceeded or performed better than our target. Total arrears as a percentage of rent due. The actual for the end of the year is 5.2%, and the target was 6. So I think that performance is really, really good. Number of tenants evicted due to rent arrears. The actual was 4. Our target is 35. So there are some issues behind that. Obviously, you know, it's an indicator that that covers 2 aspects. And then satisfaction, views taken into account, the actual was 83.5% against a target of 75. Average time to relet homes, obviously this really performed well this year, you know, compared to last year, has improved quite well throughout the year. So the actual was 20.5 days. The average, and the target for year end was 24. That's really good. Rent loss through properties being vacant, sort of voids. The actual is 0.86% against a target of 1%. So that really has come around really in the last sort of quarter or so. So those are the ones that performed really well. They've performed better than target. So that's the picture in terms of positive, those meeting target and those exceeding. And the next slide.
Well, sorry, Kaz, before we go on to the next slides for the reds and the ambers, just any comments on these greens and blues? And I think we rather quickly passed over the 8 satisfaction measures that have all met targets, and these targets are quite high, and Derby Homes' overall satisfaction levels are really, really high when we look at the Housemark type of benchmarking. Most are in quartile 1 performance, so satisfaction is an area where we're currently very strong. Yeah, but happy to take any queries on just these headline greens and blues.
No, I echo what Michael's saying. Those 8 targets getting a green, I think that's a really good achievement. We're all always too keen maybe to say wrong, but this is a really good result. Claire.
Thanks, Chair. Similar to Michael, I just wanted to pull out one of the particular ones sitting in blue, the number of tenants evicted due to rent arrears, and just to pull out that against our projected target of 35, and 35 being quite a low target compared to previous years, to actually come in at 4 evictions for the year, I think it's just worthy of note, and really demonstrates the work that we're putting in to support some of our more vulnerable tenants, to make sure that eviction really is the last result. And I think that level of evictions really does show that the investment that we're making is certainly paying dividends, both to individuals and the organisation.
Yeah, and in the year before it was only 2 evictions. Obviously, it is skewed by the fact that court hearings and court evictions couldn't take place for a large part of the year because of the COVID restrictions, and there is no doubt there's a backlog of cases that will work its way through the courts in due course, and that won't just apply to our tenants, it will apply to a range of tenants, as our homelessness prevention colleagues will be fully aware. So we've got a target again next year of 35, and we will definitely see a significant increase from the 2s and 4s of the last couple of years.
Ollie?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a moment to reflect on the amount of people we are actually surveying and still getting such a high target, which isn't maybe reflected in this. So, for example, views taken into account there. Previous years, we have been normally surveying probably about 800 to 1,000 people, but we're trying to push ourselves to make sure we survey about 2,000 people a year. This, the year that's showing here, is no exception. We managed to get just over 2,000 people for the first time. And I think there's always a bit of worry that the figures might not reflect as well with such a big push. But for saying we surveyed an extra 1,000 people and we are getting such high marks still, I think is something really to be praised as well. So I just wanted to bring up that.
And as you know, Holly, I've always been a very big critic of stats and statistics and percentages, because it's all relevant to how many people have been challenged or asked about their thoughts. So that's really good, Holly.
Yeah.
That's our team.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the reds and ambers.
So these are the exceptions, and these are the ones that are off track. So the reds, number of tenants registered for my account online. Now the actual for the year is 7,901 against a target of 9,000. And if you remember the commentary in the reports and last one, the figures for this were adjusted. There was adjustment made, so that sort of explains some of the reason why the performance is slightly low. New home starts in the year, an actual 57. Our target was 75. New homes delivered. The actual was 59 against that same target of 75. Average days lost, sickness absence, that has continued to rise, and we were familiar with the sort of reasons why. The actual was 10.7 days FTE against our target of 7. This target is quite challenging. We wanted to keep it that way to make sure they were on course, but 10.7 for the year. A number of people sleeping rough on a single night, annual estimate 11 against a target of 3. So obviously it is an annual estimate done on a particular night. I know that colleagues will comment on that. Percentages of non-decent homes, 0.6% against our target of 0. And there's a particular sort of, housing unit that's sort of contributed towards that. Previous years we've been at 0. And then the ambers, percentage of complaints resolved, initial contact, the actual was 90.3 against a target of 96, so slightly down on the target. Affordable homes delivered 649, then the count for this year again 665, and this is the delivery across time from 2008. Rent arrears of current tenants percentage against percentage of rent roll. So this was 3.3% against 3.2, so just off, almost making target. So those are the ambers. So those are the exceptions on the other side end of the scale. Those are off on red, and the ones that just missed target on ambers. I don't know whether colleagues have got any additional comments or any questions on that.
I'll start with Claire, then Ian, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of the numbers of rough sleepers, because looking at the stark figures of a target of 3 and 11 on the night could lead people to believe that there has been a substantial increase in rough sleepers in the city. What we actually found on that night was that half of those that we identified as rough sleeping on that night, we subsequently were able to check that they did have accommodation. It's just that on that particular night, they had fulfilled the criteria as bedding down as rough sleepers, and one of the individuals was travelling through, so not a Derby person, but had stopped roughly slept on that night whilst moving on to their final destination. So if you were to take away the people that have accommodation and the transient person moving through, the actual figure would have been 5, which would have been much nearer to the target of 3. So just to give that little bit of context.
Thanks for that, Claire. Appreciate that. Ian?
Yes, Chair. I just flag up, add a little bit of colour onto a couple of the indicators there. The one that's appeared on here probably for the first time in a long time is the non-decency figure, which represents 70 properties on one scheme. And that scheme, there are slight structural issues with the buildings. They're prefabs from built in 1948, and we're already on with phases of consultation and working up a project which will either mean they are redeveloped or refurbished, depending on the wishes of the customers in the that live in the properties. So that's a sort of long-term project we've got there, and that will cover those off. So it isn't we haven't got a plan to deal with them. Another thing I just flag up are the homes started, delivered, and in the year. A couple of things working there. Here's a throwback from COVID where our new build schemes stopped on site, and it was very difficult to get wound up and get started again with issues of the supply chain and getting subcontractors back on site. And those PIs are also added to by our acquisition program when we buy properties on the open market. And the market was very challenging last year with shortage of supply and increases in the cost of properties, which certainly challenged our ability to buy them, or get in on time. Properties were sold usually before they were advertised, so that impacted on the figures. So that's why we're just slightly lower than what we anticipated.
Ian, I can't see who the person is, but somebody on +4's got their hand up.
I think it might be me.
Right, carry on.
Me as well, and me as well. It was, I think.
Right.
Anyway, I was just going to applaud the amber of the rent arrears. I think that to have that level of rent arrears, given the current challenges, is really good news. Obviously, we've got to continue to concentrate on that because things aren't going to get any easier. But it's well done given everything.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Just to add a bit of context on that, the Housemarque median is 3.35% for landlords over 10,000 properties. So we're pretty much bang on the Housemarque median, which, based on our not sympathetic, but the way that we try and engage with tenants to help them sustain their tenancies, is a really pleasing outcome on the current tenants' arrears.
Jan?
Thank you, Chair. Just was wondering if there were any sort of trends in relation to the increase in sickness absence. I know that the target of 7 days was and previous performance was always exceptionally good, but just wondered if it was COVID related, where people have been forced, if they have had COVID, have been forced to take the period of isolation off, and whether that's affected it or not, or if there's any other trends emerged from it.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just quickly answer that one. These figures exclude COVID absences. That Derby Homes, like the council, made the decision to report on non-COVID related absences only. You're quite correct that it's increased substantially from the outturn figure last year. It's split very roughly 6 days long-term sick, 4.7 short-term absences, and the majority of our long-term absences are mental health, anxiety, stress related ones, and most of those, or virtually all of those, are non-work related ones. And I think there's no surprise coming out of the pandemic. A number of people are finding it difficult to adjust to things, and that is the main reason for the increase in the absence increase. Derby Homes, just like all other employers, will be looking to support employees wherever possible, whilst they're going through periods of difficulty.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tony, then Jem, please.
Just following on from what Jan was saying and Peter, is any of that to do with working from home rather than working together in the office? If you're sort of on your own at home, you're obviously under more stress to some extent than if you've got colleagues around you. I mean, is Derby Homes back in the office these days?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, Tony, and it's one that we're really we do consider. We do say Derby Homes does operate on a hybrid basis, so teams will work in the office 1, maybe 2 days a week. So some may work more often. That purely depends on what the customer requirements are of the service. In terms of people who may be suffering from isolation, we do say to them, if hybrid working doesn't work for you, then by all means come into the office. There's not a remit where you can only work in the office 1 day a week or anything like that. If it helps people to have a bit more people around them working in the office, then they can do that. So. And we do have a couple of people who haven't got the facilities at home for home working who do come into the offices all of the week. So it is something that we're aware of and we try and accommodate for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to add some more detail to what the update Claire gave around the rough sleep account. And that, as Claire pointed out, if we took those 6 out, there were 5 left. I think we need to bear in mind as well that all 5 of those people did have an offer of accommodation that night. So they would have been offered, either a place at Milestone House or bed and breakfast, but had declined to take that.
If I could just recap on the average sickness days lost. I know I've asked a question before, so please humour me if you just forgot what the answer was. Can we not break that down to long-term and short-term sick? Because I think that would help an awful lot to know. And I think I've asked this question before.
Yeah, you have. And what we've done, Bob, is on the slides that are beneath these summaries, on the very last slide, where is it? We've got a slide on absences, particularly where that split is between 6 days and long term and 4.7 short days are, and here it highlights that if we'd included the COVID element, it would have been as high as 11.5 days last year. So we have got a bit more detail there, and also accompanied to the email is an appendix where we've got the full narrative linked to the KPI. I appreciate there's a lot to read through in those attachments, but the data's there. But by all means, query it if you're not been able to spot it when reading through.
If I'd have waited, you'd have come up with the slide anyway.
Well, our intention tonight was just to go through these exceptions.
That's right, yeah.
Because these are the headline ones from, and there's a bit more detail in the slides below. And like I say, there's more details in the reports that are attached, which have been sent out via email and attached to CMIS now.
Apologise for that. I have got mine. I should have just double checked. Thank you.
I'll stop screen sharing if there's no further queries.
Lucy?
Yeah, just one other point, which is a bit more background, please. It's comments in the main report 4.4.7 that homelessness approaches have increased. There's an increasing number at the end of private tenancies. And I just wondered if we had any information about why that's happening, and why are private tenancies ending in greater numbers at the moment than they have done in the past? Or what's happening to the properties that have been let? Are they being sold or people moving into them, or do we have any data on that? And is it the start of a trend that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping in to answer. Sorry, that's probably Jim wants to respond. But if I just say that I guess anecdotally, we've known for some time that those small landlords that have perhaps just got one additional property have been cashing out of that kind of rental market, and I suspect some of that is the squeeze that's occurring in terms of cost of living, and being either wanting family members to move into the property perhaps, or as children of the initial household grow up, having something somewhere for them to go, which can be more affordable than the private rented sector or buying a property with the current challenges. We haven't done any kind of whole scale analysis. We do know that the as Michael alluded to earlier, that there were a lot of private rented sector arrears accumulating over the pandemic period, and that landlords were not able to take the usual action through the courts. And so it may be that there is some pent up desire to move some of those through, and that's converting into homeless approaches. We are doing quite a lot of work with private landlords in terms of trying to stave off some of those evictions, and certainly we are, our private rented sector incentive team, headed up by previously headed up by Rebecca Maron, has done some really good work in making sure that we minimise as much as possible those converting to actual homeless approaches.
The sad thing,
thank you.
It's a national problem as well, because I've got a niece down in Devon whose landlords realise he can get more money in, and he's said, move her out, you get somebody else in. So it's a national problem, this one. Kaz?
Yeah, just going to back up the sickness absence figures. So the slide you've seen is sort of narrative. So we do have a larger presentation which has the split and the graph in terms of the split between long term and short term. And Annabelle Barwick does do monthly figures, so we do figures both in terms of medical absences, which is the sort of figures you've seen, then also these sort of COVID related absences as well. So there is more richer sort of information behind that. As I say, we do have monitoring on a monthly basis to capture that trend, and sort of keep an eye on sickness absence figures throughout the year.
To be fair, I think the information we get now is far better than we used to get in the past. And I think the idea would now highlighting the exceptions makes it easier to discuss them and see the reality of it all. So thanks for that. Anybody else?
Also, as well, Chair, just on sickness, as heads of service, we all have our sort of finger on the pulse of absences, not, to make sure we can offer as much support as possible to get the member of staff back to work. So, when somebody is off, we have really good process to be able to engage with them and managers. So we're all aware of absences, and like I say from earlier, what Tony raised, right the way through the pandemic, those people who have been suffering on their own through mental health issues, we've had spaces within London Road and the council house for them to work right the way through if they needed to come into the office. So we're doing everything possible to support everybody to be at work.
I think the major concern at the start of it was that the poor, somebody who lives on their own, how being on their own and working from home. But I know you took that and sorted it, so that's good. Thank you. Any other questions on this? Thanks, guys. And your team. Thanks to your team, because this is working now the way we do it. So thanks to your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on then. I think the next one is A2, is it not? Not what you've done, supplementary questions, have we not? No? Yeah. Right, operational board forward plan. Who's picking that up? Anybody?
Sorry, can you just go back to A1?
Sorry, yeah.
I had replies to the question about grounds maintenance.
Yeah.
This is a continual going on. At the beginning of each year, we're told everything's hunky-dory, and then as soon as we get into halfway through the year, sorry, everybody's left and we haven't got any staff. Now, you've chased it up around our area where they've been on site for 2 days mowing and collecting grass, so they've done a very good job. But this is just an ongoing problem and we're being charged for it. So what's Derby Homes doing to get really on top of it, to solve it once and for all and to give us value for money?
And of course, there's some tenants as well who pay for the grounds maintenance scheme as well. So you're right, Tony. And
it's not just leaseholders. I mean, tenants pay for the service charge as well, don't they?
Yeah, I pay for the grounds maintenance, and it has been quite a while, as you say, ongoing. So we we stuck with the contractor because there was no point changing contractors because that would have been a negative effect. Ian.
Hi, just to say, at no point have we ever said it's hunky-dory. At every turn, we've said it's a significant challenge. What we did say was that they had achieved a full establishment on the team, which they had. But of course, you'll all be aware it's an extremely challenging employment market out there in terms of people starting jobs, finding it doesn't suit them and leaving jobs. And part of the reply I sent out to Tony earlier in the week, I did detail where we are currently. And in fact, they did have a recruitment day today where they were interviewing for new starters to try and replace the staff they've got at agency for full-time members of staff. Now, what we're going to try to do now for the remaining 6 months before we report back to this board in December is we're really going to try and step up the way the teams are organised and structured and try and improve the mowing cycle and try and improve the quality of the delivery moving forward over the next 6 months. Let's see how we go with that. Certainly on the gardening scheme, that has worked a lot better, and the frequency between visits on the gardening scheme is a lot better than it has been in previous years. But that's, I would say, to the detriment of the grass cutting. So I
think you're right.
No, it's a challenge. We're really going to work hard on it, as we have done all along. The team really working hard in trying to, stabilise the team, but it's a real challenge for them. But we've got to try and be innovative and try and work out ways of matching the skill sets of the 31/32 people that work on this service with optimising the delivery. So, it's a challenge, but it's not for the one to try. And we're not sitting down, not doing it, twiddling the thumbs.
I'm sure you're not, Ian. I'm not getting at you, but it just seems to be a continual complaint, and we don't seem to be able to get to the bottom of it.
No, it is. It really is. Yes, but I think we're going to have a bit more. We're going to have some more straight talking, and because there are other options for this service, should we wish to consider them. So it's up to them to and they're a contractor to us. They're not our employees, So it's a contracted service. So let's see how we get on. So and strangely enough, they were out on your scheme this week. They would have been anyway. They didn't come out because we received a question at the weekend. I can send you the quality of the reporting we get, and you were due to be done anyway. But it's just the frequency is too stretched out. I mean, it's been 4 weeks. You're on cut 3 and you're right at the end of the 3rd rotation. So the 4th rotation is probably due to start Friday tomorrow or next Monday, but it's still at 4 weeks, which isn't good enough.
It's just that they have to spend extra time because they've missed it. They were here on the estate for at least 2 days.
And if I just add a little bit for you, the chief executive had a back to the floor day this week, and we had SMT this morning. She wasn't very complimentary in the feedback she reported back on some of the state of some of the schemes out there. So it's not just your scheme. So message received, and we'll be working away at it.
Right.
May I come in on that same subject, because I've been picking up complaints from the public about the state of the council's grass cutting, and they've been alluding to how nicely it's been cut in Mackworth, and I've been saying, well, some of that might be Derby Homes grass and not council grass. But the reason being given to me from the council is, as Ian sort of said, that it's shortage of staff. And I've asked, and it's not just about the grass cutting, it's also about the litter picking. And I was wondering whether that there is an opportunity here for these difficult to fill posts, and whether some of the people who are being handheld off homelessness back into a stable situation, some of those people might be handheld into doing a litter picking or a grass cutting job, and we might find some of our gaps filled that way, and maybe it's something that could be explored.
We have, just if I can come back there, I don't got my hand up, but we have previously and are continuing to look at those options, Lucy. We've had conversations with Street Pride. We've looked and spoke to Kedleston Road Training Centre about how we could facilitate some training days that would allow that educational and also ability to be able to operate machinery. Equally, the REST team, who are the Rough Sleeper team, and Milestone House also have those conversations on a regular basis with our customers about entering into and engaging training with a long-term plan of employment. And Street Pride were very keen to be part of that. And we are also very keen, and we're doing some work about trying to have, you know, lived experience individuals coming in to work with us. And myself and Claire are looking at options about how we can run with Sophie Bancroft, our, I'm not sure what Sophie's job title is, does all of our training and everything, to see how we can get some people from that cohort to be able to come in and get some work experience within Derby Homes as well. Yeah. So we are really focusing on that, Lucy.
Excellent, pleased to hear it.
Shan, then Ian.
Thank you. I'm just like Tony, I'm really concerned about this because historically it's something that comes up almost every year, and we think we've put something in place. A few years ago, the operational board actually referred it back up to the main board because of the concerns, and I really felt that some sort of work was done around it and that it was going to be improved. Now, if you kind of looked at this if it was a sort of a business or something, and it was continually each year, there's something going wrong somewhere. I'm concerned, Ian, that you're suggesting that I know that you're going to be doing some work and stuff, but that is going to be another 6 months. So that takes us to October. All the grass season will be over. The work will have been done by then. Before we have a report back. I think that if from the people who are living in the areas and are saying that there are problems again this year, that I think we need a report sooner than the 6 months. And I say I am concerned, and that concern needs to be fed back, I think, to the main board. I don't necessarily want it to come like a whole report back to the main board, but I think we as a group, if I'm picking up rightly, the concern amongst people, that we need to say this is starting to be a problem again. We need to flag this. We need to make sure that it is a priority, because historically we've kind of had a number of years where it has been a problem. It's not something that's just come up now. We've got that track record of it as well, historically, being an issue. So I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Well, Shannon, you've alluded to something I was going to wait till the end, but you brought it up now. Is I think from an operational board point of view, you could almost tick the box to say, yep, this meeting that has gone on for a long time. And I think I was going to suggest for the board to think about, A, do we need to get the contractors in to explain to the operational board? Do we, as Jan said, refer it up somehow to the main board, because it is a problem? And at what point are those who pay for the fee going to start saying, I want a discount?
They're already saying it, Bob.
Sorry?
They're already saying it.
Put it to the operational board, but what do I'm looking for your views.
I mean, if I can just interrupt, I mean, Michael keeps saying it's going up 10% per annum because we're not paying enough at the moment and we're still not getting the service. So, no wonder we're complaining.
Chair, can I come in? I've muddled up a little while about this one because I think, Ian mentioned that we had quite a long conversation at SMT today about this very subject, and I think there's an absolute recognition that this has been a problem for years for different reasons, and but the issue of staffing has been a consistent reason put forward for at least 3 years, if not more. And of course the staffing issue is exacerbated at the moment, as we know, across as some of the impacts through the pandemic has left some roles more difficult to fill, and clearly that's being felt within the grounds maintenance service more than in some other areas. But what we did talk about at some length was one, what's the solution? And I know that there was a session only this afternoon starting to bring forward some more urgent responses. And we also were talking about whether or not there needs to be conversations regarding reimbursement in the way that you've suggested. So I suppose just to give assurance to the operational board that all options are currently being discussed, and it is of course within your gift to ask for this matter to be referred again to the main board, and also to ask for an urgent report back to the operational board on the planned next steps, and those are two things that might give the operational board some assurance that this is being looked at with some urgency across the senior management team.
Ian, then Dennis.
No, I'll just finish off because I agree with what Claire suggests. I mean, we can come back to you with a report which details the proposals to improve the service, and also I don't see why we shouldn't get the contracting arm in to present it to you, or certainly part of it, to be accountable for the service being delivered. So,
yeah.
Fine.
Dennis? You're on mute, Dennis.
This happened last year, and what was the answer? More money, more money, more money. We keep pouring money into this service and still getting a rubbish service.
Jan?
Yeah, Dennis, from what you've said and what I was just about to say as well, is that I think it does need to be referred back to the main board. I was just thinking, if I as a main board member, if I wasn't on the operational board, we had the discussions at main board, we approved more funding going in, and actually the service, there are still issues around the service, so I would be wanting some reports back at main board. For those main board members who aren't at operational board, I think it does need to go back.
And I fully support what Jan said. It's been ongoing, and we know that there is issues, and we appreciate that. But I think operational board, is there anyone who doesn't support the fact that it goes back up to the main board again? I think Jan's absolutely right, and I can see on the financial side, like Ms. Claire said, reimbursing, and that's not what we want to be doing. We want the service. I'd rather get the service than the reimbursements. So I take Jan's point from in there. As I say, that's fully support what everyone said tonight.
Yeah, and I support.
Okay, happy with that, Tim? Right, we'll do that.
So
then.
do we prepare a report for the next board meeting, main board meeting? Is that the instruction? That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Lovely.
You. Dennis, you finished? Or you want to add on? Okay, is that everybody happy with the A1? Thanks everybody for your input. It's been quite emotional, but we may get referred to the main board now. A2, the operational board forward plan. Any questions or comments on that?
Shall we note it, Chair?
Yes, we'll note that one. Okay. A3, Bobby, is this you?
No, thank you, Chair. It's me. It's me. Bobby is here to support me on this item, and also on the domestic abuse items. For any operational questions, he's our operational expert in both areas. And I'm picking this report up, as I said previously, on behalf of Lorraine Testro, who's the responsible head of service. In terms of the safeguarding policy, there has been a recent audit carried out by Central Midlands Audit Partnership, CMAP. Even though the safeguarding policy schedule is not due to review this policy until 2023. The audit outcome was very favourable and received a rating of substantial, which is the highest category possible in terms of audit. They did make 2 minor amendment recommendations, which we are minded to accept. And they are both in relation, that they're both classed as low risk, but they're in relation to expanding on the detail in the safeguarding policy and training slides to explain the circumstances where it would be reasonable for a staff member to override the sharing of information without consent. And in 4.2, we list out the circumstances when that would be the case. And so the policy has been amended accordingly to add in that extra level of detail. And we've also added a couple of extra slides to the training sessions we do around safeguarding to also highlight more information in relation to that area. Other than that, the policy remains unchanged and will go through its usual 3-year substantive review in 2023. So the recommendation to operational board is to approve the minor amendments that are put forward in the policy.
Bobby, do you want to add to this at all?
Hi, Chair. Just that we've completed the changes already. The slides have been updated, and nothing more to add, Chair.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Claire. Any questions, anyone? Are we happy to approve the? Sorry, at 3.1, happy to approve the recommendations?
Hope so, Chair.
Right, thank you. That's fine. Thank you very much. Now moving on to A4.
So that one's me, Chair. I got missed out of the round of introductions, so I'll quickly do that.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, you should have done, no.
So I'm Jenny Watson. I'm the Social Housing Options Manager. I'm going to put this to you today again because Lorraine is not able to be with us today. Don't know whether you want me to share. This is around the crowding and space hazard policy that we've updated. Whether you want me to share the tracked changes version or not, because I'm conscious that in the appendix it didn't show correctly.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Bear with me then just for a second.
Apologise for missing you.
That's quite all right. Where are we here? There we go. Can we say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these really are minor amendments. It's one of the policies that was due for its normal review. In principle, nothing has kind of materially changed. It's just been updated. We've rechecked the legal framework. Everything is up to date. We've really tidied it up, if anything. We've reordered some of the points. As you can see, it's the red bits that have been changed. There's some terminology changes since we've had a change in IT systems, that we're looking at bed spaces rather than permitted numbers of people that can be within a property. And it's really got some more inclusive language in here, where we talk about, rather than we will inform tenants of our proposed actions, we're talking about, considering, making them part of the process, because this is all about, managing risk as well as we possibly can for our families who are in overcrowded accommodation. There's some additional pieces then on that same basis towards the end around people who don't want to accept our offer of perhaps larger accommodation or anything else that we can do to help them manage their risks in the home. We will keep those on a regular yearly review, revisit and reoffer, anything that we might be able to do to alleviate their level of overcrowding, and make sure that we do a fire risk assessment as well.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah.
So they were the main changes. So we've got the bit right down at the very bottom about a review, and we've just put a timescale in there because it didn't previously have one.
Thanks, Jenny. That's been useful. Any questions? Lucy, sorry, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's always useful to read through these and to have a bit of a new look at it. And I have a question, and I suppose 2 questions. The first one is, there are times when you can actually put 3 children in one room. If you've got 3 girls and, you can put 3 beds in a room, maybe bunk beds, but yet we only talk about 2 rooms, be it 2 people as a maximum in a bedroom. And I just wondered where that comes from and whether it's something that we have any flexibility to consider. And the second question is, if you have somebody who has additional needs, maybe they're a wheelchair user, or maybe they have particular medical equipment that they have to have in the house, you can get overcrowding because of those factors, but still be within the sort of standard number for that property. And that doesn't seem to be covered in the policy. And I wondered whether it was something that maybe there ought to be a paragraph bullet point about.
Great question. Jenny?
Thank you. So to cover your first question, there is legislation in place that tells us how we need to measure our overcrowding. That's what dictates the number of people who can sleep in bedrooms. So we have had to rely on that, and it is included in the policy, and obviously then in the accompanying procedure that will go alongside this. I mean, in reality, we know that, you know, we're not always going to be able to solve everybody's issues. You know, we talk, you know, about the gold standard of things. You know, the reality of the availability of stock means that sometimes, you know, you might have to
compromise.
At, you know, yes, thank you. Might have to do that, you know, discount, and some families are perfectly happy to do that. But this is about managing risk once we become aware of it, and that's our responsibility, I suppose, as landlords. So that's where we come from. I totally take on board your point about, you know, becoming overcrowded when you might not technically be, you know, when we're looking at numbers of people in bed spaces. You're right, it's not something that we look at in this particular policy. It is something that is covered within the allocations policy, though we will amend, you know, bedroom eligibility ranges. We can award additional priority on the housing register for exactly those reasons. So I don't know if that answers your question enough.
I think it covers it for the allocation side, and that's obviously something you can look at, but as it happens. But for established households, people can become disabled. They can start to need kidney dialysis and have a kidney dialysis machine there. They can become a wheelchair user. But so there's not a way of assessing that in terms of overcrowding.
Yeah.
Is there another way? Have we got a different policy that would pull this up?
Can I come in on this one? Because I think you raised an interesting point. For the overcrowding policy, it's actually serious overcrowding policy, and so it's 3 or more, what's counted as 3 or more bed spaces. So I suspect that somebody that needed to use a separate room because of you know, perhaps an oxygen tank or other equipment would take up 1 room, and we would need to be part of a family that then significantly were overcrowded. So I think the likelihood of those such cases coming up and under this policy would be small. However, I do think it's worth us recognising the situation as you describe, albeit that I think it's going to be pretty unlikely that situation occurs, but notwithstanding that, perhaps not never. So I do think that we ought to include what you've suggested.
I suppose in some ways I had thought something like that might have been pulled up by looking at the equalities impact assessment, which doesn't seem to have highlighted it.
No, it doesn't, no.
So it might be we need to look at the way we do the equalities impact assessment as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll pick up on that as well. Going back to the Equalities, Equality and Diversity Forum, we're going to be doing some work around equality impact assessments anyway. So you're right, Lucy. It probably should have been picked up as part of that. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, Tony, I think you've been waiting to bring a point in.
Yeah, it's just listening to the conversation. I just wonder whether there's any Derby Homes has any responsibility for sublet leasehold properties which might be overcrowded, or whether that's, you know, a case of somebody complains there's, you know, 6 people in a 2-bedroom flat and they're creating a bit of a nuisance or noise and you pick it up that way, or whether you have any any part of this sort of overcrowding policy that you're responsible for?
I would welcome some additional
Yeah, I mean,
more clear. I'm not entirely sure.
It's going to be
Instinctively, I think the answer is no, Tony. Instinctively, because we are not applying it to any other tenure other than council housing, but we can certainly check.
I was just thinking of sort of managing agents or leasehold properties, whether you have any responsibility under this procedure policy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be housing standards as well, wouldn't it, Claire, that would be involved in anything like that. It would be a city council responsibility from the housing standards point of view. They would have more authority to be involved than Derby Homes.
Yeah, we'll ask the question and get an answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jan, you got your hand up? There's just the box still there, is it? Okay.
Take it down.
Yep. Right. Any no further questions on this one? Are we happy to approve the recommendation? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just ask, should that be subject to a minor tweak about the disability issue, which Claire, I think, was going to take away?
You're right, Lucy.
Probably ought to just minute that.
Yes. Thank you.
A5. Bobby, I know this is yours.
It's actually me, Chair.
Oh, is it?
Again, Bobby's here to support me for any operational questions that I might not be able to answer. So A5A and A5B probably worth taking together. Both are reviews, both are domestic abuse policies. Our policy's been split out to now be two policies, one being a customer facing domestic abuse policy and the other being an employee and workplace domestic abuse policy. And this is a recommendation from the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance, DAHA, where we are looking to seek accreditation. So they had a look at our policy, they gave us some advice, and one of the key things they said is that it was best practice to have the two separate policies and not the issues around customers and employees in the same place. So A5A is our new employee and workplace domestic abuse policy, which Bobby has been heavily influential in writing. So the recommendation with regarding A5A is to approve the new employee and workplace domestic abuse policy as it's presented.
I think it's, it's a sad state of affairs when we have to have separate policies, but it's needed. And Bobby and I have spoken to this when I went to visit him, and I think it's a good policy, and I think it's a fair policy, and I think it's good to see we've been responsible in putting it in place. Tony?
One thing, reading through the workplace one, do you have any sort of employees who are in relationships together who are actually work for Derby Homes, who, one partner's abusing the other, and how it doesn't seem to be covered reading this through. It refers, obviously people at home, but if you're both in the same workplace, is there something that should be there, or doesn't it apply to you?
It does, Tony. We actually had this discussion yesterday because what's happening currently is all managers and seniors in Derby Homes are getting training by the Elm Foundation, and this question was actually asked yesterday by a staff member who is in a relationship with another colleague at Derby Homes. And the advice that we're being given is every case is on a case-by-case basis, so it all depends on circumstances, so on and so forth. We would have to look at the situation, we'd have to look at the incident, we'd obviously look at supporting the victim, we would liaise with other agencies, both external, and we would have to, it would be on a case-by-case basis. as all domestic abuse cases would be, because obviously some could be based on violence, some could be based on stalking and harassment. So it would all be on a case by case basis. One thing that we are doing, we are upskilling certain members of staff as well as managers and seniors at the moment on how they can recognise and support staff who are victims of domestic abuse. So like I've mentioned, we are having training, but we're also doing some internal work with our champions. So like I've said, we've got our own domestic abuse champions internally.
Yeah, I think the policy looked very sensible to me.
Lucy, then Jan.
Yeah, thank you for this. I got on the. Are we picking up both reports at the same time, Chair?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, because on the first one, just a couple of things that in paragraph 3, there's the definition is repeated, and on page 8 under 11, there's a spelling mistake in the heading. But it goes on in terms of domestic abuse. Really strong statement saying domestic abuse perpetrated by employees will not be tolerated. Now, it's fine making a statement like that, but it's fairly meaningless unless we can actually got something that we can actually do. So that, you know, if it's domestic abuse that's taking place, but we don't know about it, we are clearly tolerating it because we don't know it's happening. If we know about it, then we will speak up and do something and refer people as appropriate. But if we can only not tolerate it, if we know it's happening.
Yeah, so it would be worth us inserting something there, wouldn't it, to reference where we become aware, where we're made aware, where we're aware.
Yes, yeah, it's something that as soon as we're aware of it, we will take action.
We could put something in regards to disclosure, so disclosure by the victim, or if another staff member might disclose on behalf of a colleague that maybe.
Yeah, I think Claire's comment about when we were aware of it, as soon as we become aware, we will take action. It needs to be in those phrases. Otherwise, it's an empty promise. So that's the first. That's from that one. And again, in the second one, in the customer orientated one, it talks about holding perpetrators to account. And I don't know how we hold them to account as Derby Homes. So it's the same thinking. We absolutely need to take action, but that might not be the right wording because it needs to be action, usually by the police, to do something. So with that in mind, do you think it could be just looked at? I don't know exactly what the words need to be. The other thing that I was wondering, and it may be something that there's a definition in national legislation for this, but it talks quite a lot in the second report about survivors. Now, you might be a survivor of domestic abuse, which took place in childhood, but do you still count as a survivor in terms of the priority that is being given to you in some of these policies? You know, is there a time when you stop being a survivor? For this purpose, you still are a survivor because you are here and now, but the abuse took place 20 years ago and the perpetrator may not even still be alive. So you're a survivor, but maybe not in this context. And I think that needs to be defined in some way. Otherwise, we may not actually give the support we really need to give to the people who need it.
I think that's really an emotive one, Lucy, because the terminology around victim can, for some people, be pretty offensive because they find it to be disenfranchising. And so therefore, that there are some people and some agency that will not refer to domestic abuse victims, will refer as domestic abuse survivors. And you know, whether the incident happened last week or 10 years ago. And so it's really difficult to find a form of words that would satisfy both.
Yeah, no, I agree it's not simple, and that's why I'm not putting forward a simple suggestion, but I want the people who really need help now because they are escaping from a recent current or current situation need to be given a higher level of priority than somebody who has experienced that in the past but is now in a good relationship but is still wanting help, because there are different levels of need. So I'm not trying to solve the problem, I'm just asking somebody else to think about it. And the other one that I was wanting people to think about is, doesn't seem to be any specific advice for staff about reporting domestic abuse concerns which they may witness when they are visiting tenants and customers. So that if they see something which they feel they're not quite comfortable with, there's nothing that says this is who you should report it to, or this is the route that you should take. Obviously, we have the sort of safeguarding policies as well, which would possibly apply, but might not apply. So it might just be a reference to another policy, but I think it ought to have at least a line in this one.
I was going to say, may I just say, I think some of that might be the procedures that sit under these policies that Bobby is developing. And I think that, you know, we have the intranet pages where we are putting all of these, and as part of the training that Bobby's talking about, we very clearly state who to go to. So I think that might be the procedure that's not attached to this, but there are procedures in place on the intranet for staff to be available of, and we do share.
Yeah, okay. if I could just jump in there, but we do have quarterly safeguarding champions meetings, quarterly domestic abuse workplace champions meetings. You know, there is champions all over the organisation who would pass that information down. And as Holly suggests, every policy there is a procedure and a process that will follow for staff to be aware of that clear process of who they report to, who they go to, where they share that information, so on and so forth. And we do have intranet pages for safeguarding and sub pages for domestic abuse.
So it just needs a one-liner in the policy to say that this is covered in detailed training, but it's still it's something that we would expect of our employees if they witness it.
Yeah.
Jan?
Thank you, Chair. Only just a quick point, something that Tony said that sort of like made me just think of something. For where an employee is a perpetrator of domestic abuse, I presume that there is something within the employee's code of conduct, contract of employment, that would cover that anyway. And if there isn't, should there be? So just to kind of raise it as an issue to maybe somebody to check, or
that's correct. Before when I put together the employee workplace domestic abuse policy, I consulted with HR, and it does come under the code of conduct.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Very good discussion there. Thank you. So we'll agree with the recommendation.
Tony's come in, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Tony, where are you?
Sorry, just on 5B. The customer domestic abuse policy, under the financial implications, it says Derby hasn't got a budget for doing any security work that's required. I seem to remember a few years ago that we had a presentation from the police who said they had. So whether there's something you can tap into there, whether they still do it, I don't know.
Yeah, we've got an internal person who does a lot of crime prevention work, but you know, depending on what work's needed, we do work very closely with the police and various other organisations to safeguard the victim within their own property from the perpetrator.
Thanks.
Okay, it was just a way of saving you some money if necessary.
Jan?
Sorry, Chair.
Chair, just to draw out on the second paper, the customer domestic abuse policy, I just wanted to draw out a point in terms of the consultation in relation to the customer facing policy, because I do think that the virtual panel were consulted on this, and there were a number of inclusions that were made directly as a result of the customer survey that was done. And I think 4.4 points to those, but particularly there was a request that we should include some information around data protection, domestic abuse for people who are disabled, in relation to abuse from carers. and a list of safe spaces and contact details customers could access. So I think it was really valuable, that consultation. And when we talked about turning this document into a customer facing one, you know, it's clear that there were things that we'd not thought about, because as so often with some of our policies, we get confused in terms of who we're talking to. Is it a customer facing document? Is it a staff facing document? And one of the things that this does really neatly is push the two documents very clearly, one into the public domain and one as a staff document. But I thought it was important just to pull out that the consultation did affect change on this occasion.
Getting back to my point, I know this consultation now is really good, and the responses, there's more and more people are getting involved in it. That's good. Sorry.
Yes, Chair, just one more thing to add. Obviously working with other agencies quite closely, there is a stat here that I just want to share with the board, and that's only 5% of all companies in the UK actually have a standalone workplace domestic abuse policy for staff. And when you look at the stats that 1 in 4 people are a victim of domestic abuse, sadly we will have staff in Derby Homes who will be victims. So I think it's very important for this standalone employee policy so it gives our employees that support.
And I think, to be fair, I know that a lot of work has gone into this one. I know Bobby's sort of driven this one, so all credit and thanks to you for the hard work you put into it.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Just listening to what you just said about domestic abuse, do you pick up child abuse within this policy? Because obviously we have our youth boards and things like this, which they might report back to you. Domestic abuse is not just husband beating the wife or vice versa. It's to coercive behaviour, children being abused.
Yeah, that's so the new definition of a domestic abuse actually is included where the child can hear, can see, and be within the household. So what all members of staff in Derby Homes are now aware of, if they come across a property or a tenancy where there is domestic abuse in that household taking place and there is a child within that household, then it's an automatic children's referral to social care, and that's under the new Definition Act, and that is cascaded down via safeguarding champions meetings to all areas of the organisation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I think this is such an important area, and I think things have come on leaps and bounds over the last 20 years. But we need to do what we can for the perpetrators, and particularly for people who are potential perpetrators, so that they are people are never get on the sharp end of what could be their activity. And I don't know if there's more that we could do on that. Is the training that we can offer tenants, or awareness raising, or articles as to where you can get help to go into Derby Homes News or something, just something else that we might somehow get out there?
You're right, Lucy. It's also about, you know, when you look at childhood trauma and you look at perpetrators, I call it that domino effect, where it kind of, you know, it's generational. And I've had a lot of experience with that. I actually attend a program once a month called Drive, and that's where perpetrators are discussed, quite high risk perpetrators. And a lot of the time, these perpetrators have gone through some type of childhood trauma themselves. So they've grown up with domestic abuse. They see that's the norm. So there's a lot of programs out there. We sit on a lot of boards where we get a lot of information. Again, that's cascaded down to our certain teams in Derby Homes that will work with victims and perpetrators for them to be able to support the victims, but also to look at supporting certain perpetrators.
It was in the training yesterday that I went on, that others would have gone on, where there was a couple of slides towards the end, because the use of the training that we went on was obviously to focus on the survivor as opposed to the perpetrator. However, there was training at the back about the perpetrator, and we equally said that that was something we'd be sharing and try to raise more awareness of internally, to make sure that we're trying to signpost and how a manager might approach that if somebody approached them saying that they had concerns that about some of their patterns of behaviour as well. So it has been covered in the training, and we are looking at, you know, as Bobby said, it's quite recent training that we're going through at the moment. So it is something that is being picked up in the comms team, and we are looking to be sharing that much wider and making it more prevalent.
Yeah, and is it? I don't know. It's something maybe not terribly relevant, but if you went onto the Derby Homes website as a tenant, would there be something that might flash up and direct people to say, you know, could your short temper be damaging relationships in your household, or there are ways to get help?
It's a tough one for me with that from the communication website angle, because I think for us, at the moment, in terms of the website, I don't know if Paul's wanting to chip in at any point because he's live broadcasting, so it might be difficult. But in terms of the website, we're trying to kind of front load more of the frequently asked questions and the things that we know are harder to push out information wise. For example, people who might be at risk of being homeless tonight, and you know, those kind of questions. And so some of these other questions start becoming, you know, a bit more behind the scenes stuff. We are having to put more, well, not having to, we're wanting to anyway, but as part of the accreditation, we are putting more information on the website than we have done before about domestic abuse. But once again, it's more of a find, and it's perhaps not as in your face, because some of the other key messages that we want to get out from Derby Homes then become first. So, you know, you can't make it too busy, unfortunately. But yeah, it is something that if we try to raise the awareness with staff as much as we can, then if they do have any conversations with customers, obviously they can advise too. So we are trying to work on. Oh, Paul's in. Do you want to jump in, Paul?
If you can hear me, I've had to unmute myself twice. Hopefully it's worked. Yeah, definitely as part of the website being reviewed part way through at the minute, we'll definitely be strengthening, like Holly said, the elements on domestic abuse and that sort of thing on the website. In fact, in the training today, because I had it today, I had it yesterday, there are other websites that you, or functionality that you can get as an add-in to your website, not necessarily for perpetrators, but that will allow someone to click to a safe space where they can look at questions and have a quick getaway to hide it from their screen, and it doesn't go into the browser history and that sort of thing. I don't know if we're thinking about that yet, but that's another level of things there. But like Holly said, we're definitely focusing on increase things internally and then strengthening what we can externally. But I think that sort of thing, it's probably good as an actual case study or a story, because then it would really make someone think, you know, and could relate to that and possibly spot signs, maybe within themselves or with other people or that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could just be so bold as to say, Bobby, I think you're going to wrap it up now, and I think we'll move on after this. Are we happy to do that? Go on, Bobby.
Yeah, just I think I could talk for the next hour or two about domestic abuse and the work that's taking place at the moment in Derby Homes. There is a lot going off, you know, regards the accreditation, etc. So yeah, there's a lot of good work going off to safeguard both staff and tenants. And that's it really. You know, like I said, I could talk for the next hour or two, but I'm mindful of the time.
And then I could just maybe, in view of all this tonight, should we as boards have a training session so we know what the staff and customers have been trained, you know, what people have been trained on? I think as a board, have we got a responsibility to undertake the training? Both boards.
Yeah, why not?
I'm happy to deliver something if required.
Thank you, Bobby. We look forward to that. Right, guys. If we look at the recommendations for A and B, notwithstanding the recommendation for changes that was made, are we happy to process forward with the changes as highlighted?
Yeah.
Yes.
With the additional points that we've discussed.
Yep. Thank you. Right. Holly, you finally got there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did. Thank you. I am here tonight to discuss the Derby Association of Community Partners, or the DACP Grant for 2022-23. So this, to summarise, is to ask the board to approve to conditionally fund the DACP the annual level of £7,400 for the financial year of 22 to 23, and to give continuation of the earmarked fund the customer engagement and community development budget. However, previous years we have looked to fund the DACP £20,000 initially, and that is what we have asked from the operational board. However, this time we are looking to recommend for you to approve an initial amount of £10,000, and then on the spend of the £10,000, a subsequent £10,000 grant. This will be delegated to the Managing Director of Derby Homes and the Vice Chair of the Operational Board. This is subject to consent from Derby City Council as well, as it is a grant. And just to go through some of the things that the DACP have been doing over the past year. So I just want to talk about the main business of the DACP, obviously bringing individuals together as an independent tenant federation and looking at supporting and sustaining our communities in Derby and supporting different community groups in Derby. Over the past year, they've undergone some more changes with some volunteers, and so we thought it was really timely to look at reviewing documentation to make sure that their terms of reference, things like confidentiality statements, were out of date. There wasn't a code of conduct for the group, and they wanted to make sure they had their own email address only accessed by members of the DACP rather than any access from Derby Homes at all, to ensure that they were totally independent. So that's something that the DACP have been working through over the past year. In table 4.8, I just want to highlight how active DACP are and how involved they are with the community projects. So, you know, if you look at the total number of applications they've received over the year, it was £34,000. However, they are actively challenging a lot of the grants that are coming in, and you know, it's quite reassuring to see that there's a lot of signposting in the DACP to look at what other funding options are available and to signpost to make sure that the community groups aren't just relying on the DACP, and they are looking at other sources to make sure that they're being as sustainable as they can be in the community. So I think those community connections are bringing really great value to Derby Homes. In terms of the latter part of the paper, I just wanted to point out the equality impact assessment, because as an independent tenant federation, their equality impact assessment looks a little bit different. So what happened was, in Appendix 1, they reviewed their grants that they grant funded within the past year, and they decided to separate it to look at their due diligence checks that they perform on the groups. So they looked at whether the groups had an equal opportunities policy and a safeguarding policy, what type of organisation they are, and the area of need that they support as their equalities impact assessment, because it's just slightly different than, you know, coming from a Derby Homes doing it. So that's the report. It is to ask and seek approval for the £7,400 annual amount, and then the subsequent £10,000 grant, followed by a further £10,000 grant on completion of spend.
Before we move on, guys, can I just point out, I am a member of the DACP, but I'm not involved as a director. I'm just like normal tenant. I'm just a member of the DACP, and I thought I'd just make you aware of that. I'm not on the board at DACP. Lucy.
I think this is fine, and I love the report about all the things that are going on. It sort of inspires me to think about what else they might be doing as well. The question, though, was about the way in which the money is being apportioned. That if the residue from this year and then the first 10,000 is spent by, say, the end of February, it would then say, look, can we have the other 10,000 approved? But there would only be a month to allocate it in. So I'm thinking that it ought to be up to a further 10,000 rather than just the 10,000 block.
Totally.
So I was going to just suggest that as a minor change to the recommendation.
I'm very happy to take that. To be honest, I think when I was having the conversation with the DACP and we were looking to split for 10 for 10, I actually said, you know, if I were them, I would be not looking to try and spend, but, you know, by November time would feel about right for me at the latest, once you know the kind of Christmas things that are coming in, for example, because Christmas is a busy period for grants. So no, I think up to £10,000 for the second. I'm happy with that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, you got a hand up? No, Tony. Tony, you're on mute.
Sorry, you're talking to me or Dennis?
No, Dennis is, I think it's Dennis is on mute, I think.
Right. I'm just a bit confused about what we're actually being asked to approve. Is that £7,400 now from Derby Homes?
Yeah. And then
additional £10,000 grant.
Yeah.
And sometime later in the year, another £10,000. So a total of 27,400 altogether. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That's
okay.
Not previous years. It's been 7,400 with 20,000, and this year we just thought we would split it to be 10,000 with the subsequent 10,000.
No, I understand that now. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think just for clarity, Tony, the extra 20,000, like the top of 20,000, is only subject to the DACP identifying suitable projects. Effectively, it's a cap of 20,000 if they were to have more projects are there, but history tells us that they don't get anywhere near spending that full amount. It's just to give us like a call off of up to the £20,000. But realistically, we've split it into two because we think they may only spend, say, 10,000, and we didn't want to earmark all of the budget and not use it for other issues.
Yeah, understand that. Thanks, Michael.
Jan, are you going to raise a question?
No, Michael's answered it. Thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, to me, it seems to be, I don't know, others have said this to me, it seems like it's run by Derby Homes, for Derby Homes, to give the money to groups that Derby Homes supports. I mean, it says in here they've got 9 active members, and I'm not disputing that. They've got a new email address, it says, for just the 9 members. Well, how is members of tenants going to contact? It's a tenant federation supposed to be. In the past, any tenant could contact. In the past, it was a Derby Homes number to ring, which half the time wasn't manned. It was a Derby Homes email address, never answered half the time, or they didn't get many. You know, to me, it's complete farce at the moment.
I would say that, to be honest, I think actually it's come on leaps and bounds since those times. So I think the point is that by having the email address that is an independent one away from Derby Homes is to empower them to be away from Derby Homes, which was their choice and their ask. Anybody can email. It's just that the 9 members that are the ones in the terms of reference at the moment, they're the only ones that can access the grants that are coming in and review the information. However, anybody is welcome to come to the meetings, and they are happening in person, and anybody is welcome to come and join. It's just that the email address and some of the more confidential information that's being shared about the grants and who runs the grants and the people who participate in the grants isn't something that necessarily should be shared wider. So only the 9 members have access to that as an email address.
No, I agree about the grants. I mean, the DACP should do that. I haven't got a problem with that at all. I haven't got a problem with the money, because to me, you're just giving money to yourself to give out. And, you know, we keep going on about, you know, well recognised, all the in the thing. Might have been 4 or 5 years ago.
I think
I doubt if it is now.
I think the DACP are really trying. They're trying to. They've asked for looking at new logos. They've asked for trying to change some of their branding. They've asked to be attending more events. I think that, you know, some of these things take time in the world of community, as you well know, Dennis. You know, nothing happens overnight, and some of these things, you know, the legacy can be equally as important as starting something afresh. So I think the DACP have reflected on that and think that it's important to keep the name of the DACP, because you know, starting off brand new and reinventing the wheel can be really hard. But I think, you know, coming out after lockdown as well, you know, sharing information and reconnecting and creating new networks is only something that Derby Homes we're doing in a hybrid world as well, equally. So I think that it's coming along well from my personal opinion, but I take your opinions on board. So thank you for that.
No
Dennis,
problem.
Dennis, if I could just say out something, this is not independent, but I'm a member, is that Derby Homes couldn't be far removed from DACP procedures than it ever was. They won't even talk about things in the office that relate to DACP. And I know some of the things you highlighted may have happened in the past. And I just think, and I'm not saying it because you say, well, you would say that. I actually believe that, you know, I've had occasions where I say something in the office and Charlie said, no, that's DACP stuff. I don't want to know. I'm not discussing it. She's quite firm about that. I can give you the honest answer on that. She won't discuss it. That's how it should be, of course. Tony.
Where would I find information about DACP these days?
Google it. They've got a website.
They've got a website, have they? Oh, thank you, Lucy.
Google DACP Derby. I've just done it.
They are looking, I know that on social media they're wanting to relook at social media, which some of Paul's team are helping out with, and we always try and add something in the newsletter. It's hard finding room, to be fair, and Paul knows this because I don't know if you guys have noticed there's a lot of community development in the newsletter, so we are conscious that we can be a bit community development heavy sometimes, but we are trying to be as active as they can. And you know, volunteer rewards happened on Tuesday night, and the DACP members, some DACP members went. DACP members are also looking at going to the next TPAS conference, and they're using some of their budget to be spent to go and have some training and attending the conference and raising awareness there. So I think it's gaining momentum.
What I think is more interesting, sorry, Chair, is where the overlap and responsibility lies between DACP and customer voice.
Yeah.
Because I don't know quite, you know, somebody who's interested in doing more and getting more involved and asking people about how things are going and wanting to do stuff. And I'm not sure how you signpost people to which part of the system, as it were.
So what we do is when anybody is interested, we actually invite them along to shadow, because I think that there's quite some key differences between sorry, the sun is coming through blinding. I don't know if you can all see, but it's just really strong. I know, it's like glowing. So the customer voice for me is a lot more about scrutinising the services of Derby Homes and really providing that tenant empowerment about the services that affect them, whereas the DACP is more about community and more about the different groups in the community and signposting and supporting in that respect. So that's why the customer voice is you know, ran with Derby Homes, whereas the DACP is independent of Derby Homes for those two perspectives.
Charlie will tell you anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions, anyone? Dennis, you got your hand, you still got a hand up, you got a question? You're on mute, Dennis. Did you want to ask a question? No. Okay, we'll move on then. So, the board.
So we're agreeing, Chair. We're agreeing that with that slight change up to 10,000 for the second section. Yeah.
And I think Lucy, that was a smart move to do that, Lucy. I think it makes sense.
Makes it flexible.
Yes. Are we happy to approve that? Thank you, guys. And I think, no, Holly, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do that. I think we've come to the end of the meeting, have we? Yep. Yep. And Bobby, how I say, it's very brave of you to have that poster behind you at the minute.
Once a ram, always a ram, eh, Bobby?
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
Now, may I just ask something? We've got the dates in. I can't find the paper now, but we have the dates for the next meeting, which is September, and it's quite a long way away. So it might still be a flexible date, because it's the 8th of September. For me, it clashes with a planning meeting. So if there's flexibility in that date, I would be happy for it to be moved. But I leave that, obviously, Chair, it's not really up to me.
I know, but your input is,
But if I didn't ask, nobody could consider it.
That's what I always say. Don't ask, you don't get. The thing is, Lucy, if it can be accommodated, we can work around it, then obviously we would, wouldn't we? Yeah. You know all that?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring the meeting to a close, and I'll just ask you all just to visualise the time. It's work tonight. Ollie, don't. Okay, guys, I really appreciate the input, and it's been really hard learned a lot tonight from the Bobby's reports and the other reports on that side of the house. So I think it's really been good. And look forward to seeing you all. Have a good weekend. The forecast is sunny and bright. So there you go. Take care, and I'll see you all soon.